that's a very appropriate outfit that you've chosen for this episode.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, it was the first thing that I found in my closet, and that's why I wore it. That's the only reason why.
This week's a little interesting. We don't have Rob here.
We don't need him. Get out of here.
But there's as I was thinking about what we're talking about this week, there's two very emerging themes with the two things that we're going to talk about. The first is, Brad, I know right now you are a New Yorker by geography, but at heart you are a Canadian. And
I sometimes I've taken my life in hands when going to a Yankee game when the Jays are playing wearing this jersey. So I am a true blue Canadian person, and I bleed Canadian red.
You are proud
at the worst of times and the best of times. Exactly.
So this episode, there's a lot of Canadian references, even closer to home, Ontario references. So we'll get into that, and then we're also talking about two sort of coming of age stories, I guess, of young teenage girls. So it's funny, the Miss Marvel trailer, which we'll talk about first, just dropped today, and it fit in so perfectly with what we wanted to talk about. So I'll pass it over to you, Miss Marvel.
Miss Marvel,
the trailer dropped today. What did you think?
It did. Well, you know what? I didn't know it was coming out today. I didn't. I don't think anybody knew. No, this is like Disney's new thing, apparently. Like, they used to give us like a little bit of a heads up, or there would be rumblings of some nature that something was going to come out.
Yeah.
Kenobi. They did the same thing with Kenobi. So we didn't know. We didn't really know it was coming out. But this looks great. This looks great. And very much within the same vein of what we've been talking about with this new phase of Marvel and Marvel's new TV shows and emerging of characters that were at one time considered, I guess, B-list, C-list, D-list characters are now being brought to the forefront in their own solo, standalone shows and what have you. And it looks great. But beyond that, I don't really know the character that well. So I was fully along the ride for this trailer. And then hey, listen, we're going to add a little bit more Canadian content here. A little Weekend in the background.
Little Weekend playing in the background.
Loved that. Loved that. Full circle.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a really great trailer. I thought it gave you a sense of, it's funny, like Marvel's really veering off in this direction where there's, and I think I said this on an episode, like weeks ago now, where there's kind of now something for everybody. Like,
there really is.
Like, do I think, we'll just talk about him because he's not here. Do I think Rob is as excited about Miss Marvel as maybe Moon Knight? No, but that's okay because everybody's got an option. And then it's also great that like a 12-year-old girl now has a way into the Marvel universe instead of having to kind of be like, and who's Thanos? And not that there aren't 12-year-old girls who like Thanos or like those stories, but they're just kind of diversifying their slate a little bit. And so there's a little something for everyone. The fact that this is a TV show makes it very accessible for people to dip their toe in. And then, yes, we've alluded to the Canadiana of it all. And Kamala Khan, played by Iman Vellani, who is from Markham, Ontario, is leading this cast, which I think is just This is a truly all Canadian gushing episode for us.
I'm perfectly okay with it. I love this. This is my bread and butter. You don't need to. And listen to all the listeners and the viewers out there that that aren't fellow Canadians or whatever. One thing I think you have to really understand about Canadians is we are deeply proud of any Canadian that does well. pretty much in any category.
They just have an automatic army of fans, no matter what.
There just is, without question. Like, Ryan Reynolds could shoot somebody in the face and we'd be like, there must have been a good reason. For me, with this going on right now, we're that type. We're that type of people, I guess, that we're just like, Canadian, that's a Canadian right there. They're doing it. So this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And for an industry in Canada that was very kind of like, I don't know, under the radar, I guess, a little bit, as far as, you know, our own original content and things of that nature, and who was emerging in what categories. Like, Canadians were always known for like hockey players and comedians for the longest time. And now we're Marvel superheroes, and we're,
there you go.
The basis of an entire Pixar movie, and, you know, big music stars coming out of Toronto. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's a really nice thing for us to see. And that's why we're gushing wearing our jerseys,
that's why we're filled with pride this episode.
That's why.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, is Miss Marvel a character that I know a ton about? No. And we've said before on this podcast, and we'll say it again, is like, that's okay. Like, we spend as sort of nerds of movies and like this comic book genre. Like, we spend so much time, you know, I've got to put it in here somewhere. You know, with the Batman that just came out, we knew
Rob's not here.
We've got to say the Batman. Like, we sort of knew or could take a very good guess at what that movie was about, even if we didn't watch a trailer. Whereas this, we get to go in completely blind and completely fresh, which is, you know, really a nice thing, actually, as a viewer. Yeah. If I'm sort of discerning a few clues from the trailer, you know, it seems like we have, you know, someone who is a fangirl of Captain Marvel.
Correct.
And I think if memory serves, there's lots of movies in the MCU, folks. So, you know, I might maybe getting my facts crossed, but Captain Marvel, all of that, sort of her missions and you know, adventures were sort of confidential or top secret. I think we've arrived at a point in time with this where that's no longer the case, and people really know who Captain Marvel is, and she's kind of got the same fame as like any of the other Avengers. And then you've got, you know, this girl who's sort of daydreaming at school about being a superhero. It's got the scenes in the beginning with like the thought bubble and like the sort of cartoony nature. I don't know if that's actually going to be in the show or if they just kind of did that for the purpose of the trailer, but it was reminding me of the first Spider-Man movie a little bit. Like, it had that John Hughes, kind of Ferris Bueller type.
There's almost like a breaking of the fourth wall a little bit, like, as far, not necessarily like talking right direct to camera like Ferris Bueller or Deadpool, say something of that nature. But no, there's an element of kind of, you know, she's in this world, but there's also this kind of inner dialogue that we're getting as well. That's going to be this, you know, fourth wall, like we're talking about. Yeah. But, you know, the big thing that I was also taking away with it, and you pretty much alluded to it, was, you know, this is going to be a great way for a whole other audience to kind of get on board with Marvel in, you know, younger girls, young teens or whatever. Yep. And the big thing that I took away from it, I thought it was a nice little touch. I think it's right at the end of the trailer. And you see her sitting on the lamppost with her back to us, and she's just kind of swinging her legs. And it very much put me in the mind of Spider-Man. Yeah. And that sort of same ideology that went into making Spider-Man, which was kind of like, you know, this is the most relatable character for these young boys. And that's really what, you know, a lot of young kids, like, you know, we all like or love Batman or Superman and all these different characters and whatever. But there was always something that you carry over even into your adulthood from Spider-Man, because you grew up with him. He was the same age as you, and you're seeing like the trials and the tribulations of becoming this, you know, powerful being and, you know, all the responsibilities that go with it. And I just think it's an important story to be told for this whole other group of people that maybe to date really haven't felt like they attached to something yet. So yeah, I think in general, all that being said, and seeing the general, you know, Disney and Marvel flair that they're going to put into this, like, it looks again like they've, you know, didn't hold back the expenses at all. It looks very, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and it's an obvious play for that audience. And I think it serves them, and I think it serves the audience, which is the best of both worlds for me. So I think it was the right move.
And then we're also heading towards this inevitable sort of real girl power moment when, this is our television show introduction to Kamala Khan, and then she's going to partner up with Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau in the Marvels movie that'll be coming. I'll have to check my dates on that, but that, that's in the Marvel slate, right? So I think it's like, I've said this about so many pieces of Marvel that I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but like, I can't believe we've arrived at this moment in time where it's like, it's like now we're getting into so deep cut that we have a 14-year-old Pakistani American girl who's getting powers and is going to do an all-female like team up movie. Like, that's pretty unbelievable.
It's unbelievable because years ago, like, again, for anybody that is thinking like we're over the top here or anything else, when they first announced that they were doing an Iron Man movie, they didn't think it had a big enough audience. Just soak that in for a second, because by today's standards, that's ridiculous. So now moving into this again, and this is in no way like a slight against this character, but to say that this is a or even B-list character, I think is pushing it. And so to put this in the category of C or D, just based on popularity and what general people know about the character, I think is fair. And to see this level of a show being made by a major studio is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I think it just also shows you where the market is for this stuff now, where it's just like, we're going to milk this cow. And not in a bad way. Like, this is what people want. This is what people want to see. And there's been a treasure trove of content and intellectual property with Marvel and DC, for that matter, for a long time. And it's just now becoming like a click moment and like, oh, look at all these different stories we could tell. So I think it's a great move. I think the trailer looks great. I think, our little Canadian content looks great.
We got the stars, we got the music. Like, I was feeling.
What else do you want from us?
I was feeling all the pride watching this. And also it does, just as an aside as well, like, it does look like one of the most tonally different shows that they've done, like one of these Disney Plus shows, right? Like, like Loki and WandaVision had like they weren't the same, but they had a similar vibe. And then you had Falcon and Winter Soldier and Hawkeye, which again, like kind of were similar vibes. Yeah. This is just totally like, this is like a teeny bopper, 10 Things I Hate About You. Like She's All That.
Yes, very much.
Like, kind of thing, which I think is just, you can, in this next post Endgame phase, you can tell that Marvel's having a lot of fun with like, let's try and make, they're talking about Doctor Strange, let's make a horror movie, or let's make, and let's make a rom-com kind of thing as well, or something that speaks more to our young female generation. So very cool. I'm going to watch it. It's coming out June 8th.
Yes. I think that's, and like, listen, we already alluded to this, but it's the perfect segue because again, it seems like it's a very coming of age tale. It seems like it's very, like you said, kind of, teen rom-com kind of thing. And I think that's very much what we also got with Turning Red, which came out this week. And I personally thought it was excellent. I
loved this movie. Like more than I really expected to. Like this movie really spoke to me.
And listen, I definitely want to hear your take first, because we had a little mini discussion ahead of time, and I think it would be silly of me not to let you go first for multiple reasons, but mainly the fact that this is a real coming of age woman's story, young woman's story. So obviously I can't speak on that much other than the fact of just like coming of age and like hitting puberty and doing all the things that we all do. But, before we even get into that, I do want to just quickly, because I don't want to wash over this. I think it was such, again, Canadian Pride moment episode. We got a real moment here with our director, who is Domi Shi, and she is not only the first Canadian director at Pixar, she's the first female solo director over at Pixar in Pixar's 36-year history, which is no small thing. But even beyond that, for me, was the fact that she was an intern there for 11 years. She did her short called Bow. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's very cute.
It's very cute. It's a very good one.
It's a really great one. And also the fact that she did this short, and then Pixar actually was so impressed with her, they actually approached her and said, pitch us 3 movie ideas. This is an unbelievable thing to happen to a young woman that I believe is either she's like 1 year older or 1 year younger.
She's 33.
Well, this also tells you how the internet works. I saw she was born in 1987. I also saw that she was born in 1989.
All right. Well, she's somewhere around there.
She's in the periph. But the big thing for me was just that is no small feat as a young, up and coming filmmaker, but especially a young female up and coming filmmaker that was given this big responsibility as being kind of the face.
Yeah.
The first female to direct this, which is quite honestly, it's kind of silly at this point, but beyond, I don't think that even needs to be said, but it does. I would be lying if I said that didn't hit me in the feels when I heard that. I knew she was Canadian. That was enough.
Yeah.
But to find that out, I thought was very exciting.
Yeah.
So this whole movie kind of takes place in Toronto. Shout out.
Yep.
But the beyond what we saw in the initial trailers and everything, I genuinely didn't know what this was going to be about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew that it looked great, and they had me from go because we saw that it was going to be taking place in Toronto. But beyond that, didn't really know what to expect. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so entertaining. I thought it was so sweet and so different. But me shutting up now, Kelly, go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah. So all of those good things. I won't divulge all my personal information here for identity fraud purposes, but I am around that age. In 2002, I was around Mei Ling's age.
Yep,
and I was going to the Sky Dome in Toronto to go and see the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all.
Yeah.
So just that, alone, just very much put me in.
Sure, of course, yeah.
In the story, and even they did such a good job, little details, like the girls that she's going to school with, they're wearing this silly butterfly clips in their hair. They just captured 2002 very well.
Yeah.
And I obviously can, I can relate to having a group of friends, and we were all just huge nerds and
yes,
we're dancing in the basement and choreographic dances and picking, is Nick Carter your favorite, or is AJ McLean your favorite? So
totally.
We all had our Robert that we
not only that, can I just
looked
say
really excited about Robert.
Well, no, because first of all, I was gonna say because I can't Robert, but no, I can't. It would. One of the characters that I actually related to, not in its entirety, and forgive me, I can't remember the character's name, but he was kind of the yin to May's yang in the fact that they were always disagreeing at school. The young boy,
oh yeah,
and then he shows up at the concert, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're a whatever." And
I'm trying to find
a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys that are my age that'll be like, they won't admit in its entirety how much we also liked Backstreet Boys and NSYNC.
Tyler,
thank you. The most easy name to remember. But
and they have a sign being no Tylers.
The no Tylers, yeah, yes. But I don't relate in that regard, but I did relate in the fact that he was secretly kind of he also liked them.
He also went home and was like,
Four Town. I remember that.
Four Town.
Yeah. Four Town.
There's 5. There's 5 of them. Why do they call it Four Town?
That line, I genuinely burst out laughing. It was such a mom thing to say, but it was so accurate. And I was like, thank you. That's mom got it. That's logical. Yep. Why are they called Four Town? They should be called Five Town. But I listen, every guy and every girl that was in our age bracket listened to NSYNC and listened to the Backstreet Boys. And it's a lie You're lying if you say that you didn't.
You're lying.
Don't lie to me. But anyways, aside from that, can continue.
Yes. You're just like, you've got your Blue Jays jersey on there, and then secretly underneath you have your I Love NSYNC t-shirt on.
Or my PSP.
No, and so aside from the fact that I obviously like saw my own environment in this story, like I can relate to, and I think this goes beyond teenage girls. I think it does impact teenage boys as well, but there's obviously something very, in this movie, her mom thinks she gets her period. So obviously there's like a very specific, girl lens on this, but like when your age is like 1 to 10, you're spending so much time with your family that's your whole worldview, essentially. Like whatever your mom and dad do or whatever your brother does is what your world is. And then as you get a little older and you get a little more autonomy, you get to go and start having sleepovers with your friends, and you go to the mall with your friends and ask for $20 to go to the mall. Your personality starts to change a little bit because there are now external influences that like the friends you have at school, or just you're also starting to not be with your parents 24/7. So it's like you are having your own experiences, and that's going to mold who you are as a person. And I thought that was so beautifully portrayed in this movie. And
I agree.
And like obviously we have the like very the Pixar silliness of it all, that when she gets a little riled up, she turns into a red panda. But like that, that's significant of the fact that you sort of start to develop what your parents will perceive as like this wild side, and that you're rebelling against their what they've sort of molded you into in your infancy and young and very like early childhood.
Yeah, big time.
And so I just thought that was so cleverly done. And then, I'll just say it, like, I remember being a 12-year-old girl, and like someone would show up to school and be like, oh my God, she got her period. Like, it's like all of that.
All of the things.
It was just making me giggle, and her like drawing hearts in her notebook, and her mom finding her like borderline pornographic drawings of like
her flipping out and being like, who did he do this to you?
And just like the massive embarrassment of like having a crush and someone finding out that you have a crush, like all of that. Obviously in some areas it was like very exaggerated.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it was exaggerated to the point where her mother, turns into a giant red panda and destroys the Sky Dome.
Yes, which I didn't like.
But I just thought this was, again, kind of what we talked about with Miss Marvel. It's like, You gave us a story that's about something that we don't always talk about. And also, how many times is there a 12-year-old girl, 11, 13-year-old girl who's going through puberty depicted in a movie as being an absolute basket case? And it's always like, oh my God, like she's going, she's going through something. Whereas this was from the perspective of the person going through it. And I thought that was really refreshing.
No, it was, because you really got to see the insight, again, albeit exaggerated for the sake of, being entertaining and a kid's movie. I just thought the general inner workings of how they decided to tell the story, and even, to your point, with having the friends really be her way of calming down. Yeah. She pictures her friends, and that's actually what brings it down. And, the alluding to her mom, that it was actually her mom and her dad that's the reason why she calms down, but in reality, it's actually not. It's just these kind of like, inner workings of any teenager, that it's kind of like there's certain things you want to tell your parents, and there's certain things you love about your family and whatever, but there's just certain things that, you're afraid to tell them and afraid to share with them. And, you're trying to spare feelings, but your feelings are also raging because you're going through puberty and all the inner workings. I thought they danced the line perfectly for me. And I thought that there was even, moments within the movie too, where you really got to see the parents' perspective of thinking like, the protective mama bear, and
the mother-daughter relationship in this was very sweet to me. And also that had some personal resonance. Yeah. It's like, because her mom wasn't a monster. Like, she wasn't a bad person. And sometimes we see that play out too, where it's like, oh, mom. Like, and it was like, no, like, it's just exactly how you put it, Brad, where it's like, there's just some things that are in the family zone of conversation and things that aren't.
Yeah. And, like even at one point where, she even said, and you know what, this part probably hit me the most of the whole movie, was when, she's trying to sneak out and she's trying to go to Tyler's party where she's going to make this extra money and blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, there's the moment where, she tells her mom, like, I'm going to Mathletes. And the mom essentially like invites herself along. And there's a moment where she essentially, Mei Ling has to say, like, I don't want you to come.
Yeah.
And I think we've all had that moment with our parents where it was kind of like, no, I want to do this just with my friends, because up until a certain age, like, your parents are your best friends, and your parents, make you their world.
Yeah.
And so that moment of kind of seeing like the mom's heartbreak of her saying like, I don't want you to come, and like, I just want to do this on my own, was very like, oh no, like, because that we did that at some point. I can't totally pinpoint it for me, but I definitely know that there were just moments where it was kind of like, going to a baseball game or going to like.
Well, maybe you don't remember that, Brad, but don't tell me that you never pulled the like, oh, hey, I'm going to go sleep over at that friend's house, and we're going to go sleep over at that friend's house, and then you're off in a bush party somewhere.
Yeah. A bush party. That's a very Canadian thing as well.
Sorry, Mom.
This is, they know. That's always my favorite thing, though, is also when your parents find out later. You think you like had them totally duped, and they're just like tell you later down the road. They're like, did you not know that we knew what you were doing this entire time? Anyway, but all that being said, I think the big takeaway for me on this too was just like its general poignancy, as far as, just the, again, coming of age story and seeing it told in such an interesting way, especially when I didn't know where they were going with it at all based on the trailer.
I knew she turned into a panda. That was as far as my understanding of this movie went.
I knew there was a big red panda, a little girl, and Toronto was the backdrop. And that, again, like I said, that was enough to get me initially hooked. But watching it in its entirety, I thought it was so great. I thought it was such a great story. It was very poignant and funny. The big things that I do want to talk about as well is there has been some, I think it's fair to say, controversy circling around this movie.
Yeah, this little sweet movie.
This cute little movie.
That's set in Toronto and has an almost all Canadian cast. What? We're so polite. How is there so much controversy?
Calm down, everyone. But there was a couple of things. And one of them, which I thought was, I will say again, not knowing a bunch of what was going to go on in this movie and, what some of the inspirations were and what have you. One of the big things that our director wanted to get into this movie was her love of anime and this kind of mixed media thing she wants to do while not abandoning. Well, Pixar look.
We would be remiss to not in conjunction that like this movie is centered around an Asian family. They live in Chinatown. Their culture is incredibly important to this story. So, we would be remiss not to mention that. And that is a massively central part of this whole thing.
Big time. And like, again, anybody from Toronto knows there's a very large Chinese community We're a
cultural melting pot.
We really are. Like, Toronto is a very big one. And I don't know that a lot of people even know that outside of Canada, especially maybe even Toronto, but it's just like a I don't know, day-to-day thing for us. Like, as some communities might not have that, like New York does, but I would say Canada or Toronto's is even bigger than New York's in a lot of ways. So all of this being said, there was a general love that she had for anime, and she wanted to kind of add some of these elements in, making it more of like a mixed media thing, whether it be like these very over the top, moments with friends, or these very like over expressive and like motions and stuff that is very central and very a part of anime. Or even when they were gushing over the boys in the band and the eyes go big and like twinkly and, hard eyes and things like that. It was very obvious to me once I started to watch the movie that I was like, oh, I didn't know they were doing this. This is actually very cool. I don't think I've seen this in a Pixar movie. Yeah. And I thought it was a very interesting thing to see because not that Pixar they're brilliant in the stories that they tell, but there's a look to Pixar that has been very kind of standard, I think, for a while now. Like, especially the human characters all have like a very particular, like they even have a filter on Instagram now, for instance, where it's like, make yourself look like a Pixar character. So there's a very known look to Pixar movies. Yeah. And I think this was something that maybe either people weren't privy to or didn't understand or whatever. But I do think that kind of maybe threw some people off. But also being kids of the 90s and early 2000s, like, Pokemon was a big thing. Dragon Ball Z was a big thing. And we all Sailor Moon was a big thing. And so we all had these kind of moments growing up with it. So I don't think it really came off as forced to me, but I was wondering how it struck you, because there were definitely people who had a problem with it.
Well, I mean, and I am hesitant to even give this more airtime than it's already been given. But like, and this kind of ties into, there was a really stupid review from Cinema Blend. We won't go into all the details of it. I think everybody who's privy to that has kind of read about it already, but I think it's just like it's what we were saying about Miss Marvel and having, it's like, it's 2022 guys. Yeah. And so, we don't have to, not everything has to look the same. Not everything has to feel the same. I think you make a great point that like in 2002 as well. So like, not only is it just totally great that she's inserting this style and her culture and all of these things into it just because, but in addition to, you make some great points about some of the things that were culturally relevant in 2002 and how that very kind of much also plays into stylistic choices and things like that. Big so time. I think overall, like it's time, it's 2022. While we still have a lot of ignorance in the world, there's also a lot of just like people getting a little smartening up a little bit and going, you know what, like we just can't keep telling stories about white dudes. Sorry. Yeah. So like,
sorry everyone.
That's enough of you, Brad. That's enough.
I'll go.
Yeah. So I think, I almost struggle to even respond to that, Brad, because it's like, are you kidding me? Like,
well, I think you know what I mean? People,
like, it's like, part of me just wonders. It's a cute animated movie, and there were some stylistic choices made that resonated with the director's creative vision and also have a lot of like cultural relevance to a lot, or not even cultural relevance, just like there are people who are fans of that style regardless, like, Well, the big thing for me was just that, I don't know. I've actually found it very refreshing, but I don't know. People are funny though, right? Because I think a lot of the times it just comes down to people get used to a certain type of thing and they think they're going to get it. And when they don't get it, it throws them off. And when they're thrown off, they feel like they don't like it, instead of, really trying to take in what it was that they were trying to show you as far as like a new style or a new take on something. And I don't know. Yeah, there just seemed to be some people that were kind of very riled up about the fact that, the characters were a certain way and they were very kind of in your face, especially, some of the friends, like one of the friends was very like yelling a lot and very like incredibly animated, and no pun intended. But the big thing was just that they were saying like, some certain characters are annoying and whatever. And it's like, yeah, but that was the style choice. And this very kind of in your face, like actiony, like choppy, very funny, silly moments within the movie, I thought it lent itself perfectly to the story. Literally, I have an equivalent to every single one of May's friends. Like those were the kids that I went to school with. Like there was nothing. Yeah. So Yeah, and you know, it's interesting too, because as we started this conversation, just to kind of bring it full circle, is you were talking about, you know, what an incredible accomplishment for the director of this movie, but at the same time, this is, if not the first, one of a small number of movies that have just gone straight to Disney Plus here, and weren't released theatrically, which I think is a shame, because I think, I mean, on one hand, you know, that means that people have greater access and they don't have to spend a ton of money on popcorn and tickets and gas.
Yeah.
Speaking of Canadian, prices of gas here are getting...
They've got my app. Put me in the poorhouse.
But at the same time, like, there is something there, luckily, because I say luckily because, Brad, I know how dearly you hold the theater experience, as do I. There is something still about a movie being in a theatrical release that kind of puts it on a different plane of, like, respect and, like,
notability,
sort of, and all that stuff. So I think it's too bad. This movie, this is a big statement because of how excellent Pixar movies are. This is in my top 5 Pixar movies of all time.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I honestly, again, I think, well, this was another point, like you just said, this was another point I was going to bring up about some of the controversy surrounding this movie. That it was released on Disney Plus exclusively. There was no theatrical release, and then, you know, being put on Disney Plus afterwards, which, quite honestly, I think the route that the Batman is doing right now, shout out Batman, the Batman
counter, we need to add the Batman
2 or 3
counter.
I think. Yeah. But the big thing that they announced pretty early on to, you know, them doing this media scrum and media blitz as far as the movie's promotion was that they said that they were going to put it into HBO Max. Within like 6 weeks, which in the history of movies usually meant like the movie bombed. But this is the kind of new normal. And it's kind of like, listen, they make most of their money in the first 4 to 5 to 6 weeks, and then you pull it. Or it just lingers there for no reason and blah, blah. So I think this is the right move. So I'm deeply confused by why Pixar decided that this one they were going to put directly onto Disney Plus. And I don't want to, like, read the tea leaves too much, but some of the other controversy that was surrounding this was the fact that, you know, we were dealing with a sensitive subject, I guess. Like, we didn't all go through it or are going to go through it at some point.
Puberty.
Oh, my stars. And this pretty normal, in my mind, story of 3 girls being obsessed with
a boy
band and thinking they're really cute and wanting them to be their boyfriends. And, you know, attention to the presses, like, girls like sex too. Like, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that out of left field. And quite honestly, I'm surprised that a story like this hasn't been told sooner in this kind of way. Yeah. And I was actually, again, not knowing what the story was going to be, but after watching the movie, being very proud of the fact that Disney wasn't afraid to kind of go, no, this is a real story. This is something that goes on. This is something that I think feels very isolating at times for kids, whether they be girls or boys. And it's a very awkward, weird, emotional time. And I thought they told it in a very fresh, funny, interesting, delicate way that didn't rock the boat. But there seemed to be a lot of parents and we won't go into the deep dive here of who didn't like it, but there's a lot of groups of people that are having a lot of issues with this. And quite honestly, I think it's pretty ridiculous because I think it was actually handled very tactfully. And like I said, I don't know if this is why Disney, I don't know, maybe panicked and was like, maybe this isn't a good idea to put in the theater. But
Yeah, I mean, right now it's got like I think the good news is it's got 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that that's the holy grail of anything, but it's a good. People are liking the movie. I think
it's very much more positive than it is negative.
Yeah, we could this could be a whole other episode talking about there's also the element of like the pandemic and like and if there are people who are unvaccinated, it's children. So maybe there was a bit of a gamble of putting a children's movie that's about a sort of fresh topic. Like there's so many different things here, but I think what I'll choose to take away to just sort of like, keep it light, keep it positive, keep it on, what Pixar is supposed to do is it's getting, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and it's getting, and then, and we had a bonehead on Twitter, post a stupid review and how many people were like, oh no. Like,
you're an idiot.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. So, that guy got torched. He got absolutely torched.
Yeah, he did. So, I think overall, like these are sort of, I guess, like, just to kind of put a little bow on it here, like these are kind of the growing pains of like trying new things in different, this is a totally different subject matter. It's kind of the growing pains of someone's got to sort of blaze the trail at some point. And, you might have to go the Disney Plus route to just even get it out there. And then that sort of kind of paves the way for somebody else to tell a similar story and have that go into the theater. And so it's all a part of the journey.
That's my thing.
My Buddha, like my prophecy, like my take here. Yeah.
That's I think you're bang on. And that's essentially what I was alluding to as well, because
words of wisdom.
I don't think this is just, there's so many examples of this in almost every generation where there's this overreaching of adults, let's call them, that are just so concerned that things are over the heads or too much for kids to handle, whether it be like a scary thing or something that deals with a bodily function or, things of that nature. And I think it was actually even more so such a proud moment for me to see Domi do this with the film. And not only like, there's all these levels that I talked about with being proud of her, number one, and then even more proud that she wasn't afraid to kind of be like, look, this is a story that I think needs to be told. And again, to Disney's credit, they told it. And I think it was done incredibly well. And I don't know. I just think that there's so many movies that have been over the years that they're like, oh, this is too much for kids, or this is too much for whatever reason. And it ends up being the one that most kids actually glom onto and they love the most. And so I think if anything, I think it's rocking the boat in the right way, if it is at all considered rocking the boat. But all in all, I think this was an absolute masterstroke from Disney. I think that if you haven't seen it, and I don't think we actually blew too much, so I don't know if this was too spoilery.
I mean,
if you haven't checked it out and you're watching our review first, go check it out. And one little nod that I especially liked, and there was a lot of little Toronto nods throughout the entire, whether it be the TTC streetcar going by or actually even and this is more of a Pixar thing, but even seeing the clouds in the sky, they look like Andy's wallpaper from Toy Story and little things like that. But was even the little shot at the end, near the end of the movie of Skydome and the rebuilding, and a little blue jay shows up in front of the Skydome and flies away. That was such like a pure joy moment for me to see something like that. Again, just being a proud Canadian and a proud Torontonian and a proud Blue Jays fan, to see a little nod like that. I just thought it was, if you're from Toronto, it was such a beautiful thing to see. And if you're not from Toronto, you're going to see a cute new side to Toronto and a great story, I think, in general.
Agreed.
Right? So
is that, I think we covered it, Brad. I think we paid homage to our country.
We did.
We spoke about trailblazing young women in animation and live
Cinema.
action.
Yes.
Yes. So Brad,
this is a real love letter.
You know what? This is like, I'm feeling just so warm and fuzzy inside.
Me too.
Brad, do you want to tell our viewers what they can do to support our podcast and our YouTube channel?
Kelly, I will. And people, listen closely. We need a like. We need some subscriptions, whatever. But all of the things, all of the good things. Watch us, like us, check out some of our previous episodes. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out wherever you do your podcast listening. Do us a favor. Leave a little 5 stars, perhaps. You know it's a 5-star pod. Come on. Leave a 5-star, leave a little review. It helps us with the algorithm. We're trying to get this little show on the road as far as, doing some bigger things and what have you. And it helps a lot. So we would very much appreciate your help. And we appreciate you listening. And that being said, I'm Brad.
I'm Kelly.
She's Kelly.
We'll see you
later.
later.
Canadian. We'll see you next time.
Canada.
Oh, Canada. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.